Welcome back to Let's Talk Taxes. We always try to go beyond the headlines, and today we're diving deep into the IRS's new rules with Tax Service LLC. These new rules are for platforms like Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal. Those apps we use all the time for like splitting dinner with friends or paying the dog walker?
Yeah, definitely been causing some confusion, especially all the talk about that $600 threshold.
Right. Imagine selling some old furniture online and you make like 650. Before, it wouldn't have really mattered for your taxes, but now it might.
Yeah, it might.
Could you break down why that is?
Well, it all comes from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Initially, it was aimed at making sure wealthy individuals weren't dodging taxes. The idea was to lower the amount you had to earn before these platforms had to report to the IRS.
Instead of like $20,000, which is a lot of money, they dropped it down to only $600.
Exactly. Suddenly, a lot more people's transactions were on the IRS's radar.
Wow.
But there's good news. The IRS delayed the full implementation after a lot of pushback.
Phew. That's a relief. So what's the situation now for the upcoming tax season?
Well, the threshold for 2024 is $5,000. So you won't get a 1099-K form from these platforms unless you make over $5,000 through them during the year.
Okay, that makes more sense. But what about all those smaller personal transactions people make? Like splitting groceries with a roommate or sending like a birthday gift to family?
You don't have to worry about those. Things like reimbursements, gifts between friends and family, or even money sent through Zelle are all exempt.
Oh, so Zelle is totally different.
Yeah, because Zelle works directly between banks. It's considered like a bank transfer, not a third-party payment like Venmo or Cash App.
Ah, so it's all about how the money moves behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So to be clear, it's mainly business transactions. We need to be mindful of hitting that $5,000 limit.
Yeah, you got it. If you're using these apps for personal reasons, you're likely in the clear. But if you're a freelancer getting paid through Venmo or selling things online, those are the transactions that count towards the threshold.
This is making things much clearer. But even with this higher threshold, isn't there still a chance for things to go wrong? I've heard some stories about IRS errors or platforms making mistakes.
It's true, there's always that possibility for errors. Sometimes these systems aren't perfect and mix things up. That's why it's so important to stay organized and keep good records of your transactions. That way, if you ever need to prove something to the IRS, you have documentation to back it up.
That's good advice, and it brings up another point. This whole situation feels like it's still evolving, right? What with lawmakers proposing different thresholds and the whole debate around it?
You're absolutely right. There are ongoing discussions in Congress about changing the threshold again. Some want it lower, some higher, and some even want to go back to the original $20,000. So it's definitely a dynamic situation.
Yeah, so keeping up with the latest developments is really important. I bet that's where having a tax professional can really help.
Absolutely. Navigating these changes can be tricky, and having expert support can take a lot of stress off your shoulders. A good tax professional can help make sense of the rules, stay updated on changes, and ensure you're filing correctly. That peace of mind is priceless.
Well said. This has been a fantastic overview. We've covered so much ground already, the reasons behind the new rules, what types of transactions to watch out for, and why staying informed is crucial.
We've only just scratched the surface.
That's right, and you know what that means. We're diving even deeper after a quick word from our sponsors.
It's interesting, this whole situation, it kind of highlights the unintended consequences of trying to close tax loopholes.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like the initial goal of going after wealthy tax evaders might have actually hurt everyday taxpayers.
Exactly. By lowering the threshold so much, they kind of cast a wider net and might be catching small-time sellers and casual users, people who were never really the target. Like, imagine if you were just selling a few handmade crafts online as a hobby, and suddenly you have to deal with these complex tax forms.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. The people they were trying to help are the ones most affected. And as you mentioned before, the added costs of tax prep, the fear of making errors, it's a real headache for people.
Absolutely. And there's also the psychological impact. All those people who are now worried about getting audited, even if they've done nothing wrong, that fear is real, especially for those who aren't familiar with tax laws.
It's a lot to process, especially with all the confusing information out there. So let's recap some key takeaways for our listeners, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sounds good.
First, the current threshold is $5,000 for the 2024 tax season. But this is important. It could change in the future depending on what lawmakers do.
Right. Staying informed is key. It's a dynamic situation.
Second, it's important to understand what transactions actually qualify. We talked about how things like reimbursements between friends, gifts, and Zelle transfers are usually exempt.
Exactly. It's all about knowing the details and when those dollar amounts matter. For most people using these apps for everyday things, they're not going to hit that threshold. It's more for those using these platforms as part of their income.
Okay, and finally, the most important takeaway is to stay informed. Keep good records, and don't be afraid to get professional guidance if you need it.
Couldn't agree more. Navigating tax laws can be tough, and having an expert can make all the difference in feeling confident come tax time.
This deep dive has been really insightful. I feel like we've really explained this topic that's causing a lot of confusion for people.
I hope so. It's important for people to feel empowered when it comes to their finances. Knowledge is power in these situations.
Absolutely. So as we approach the new year and tax season, what's your advice for listeners who are feeling overwhelmed? What are some steps they can take?
First, don't panic. Take a breath, and remember, there are resources available to help. Start by getting your financial records together and checking your transactions on those platforms. See how much money you're moving through those apps.
Yeah, getting organized is always a good start. It can feel less overwhelming once you have everything in front of you.
Exactly. And if you're unsure about anything or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to a tax professional. They can help you figure out how this information applies to you. Having that expert guidance can make a world of difference.
Speaking of expert guidance, I know you and your team at Tax Service LLC are dedicated to helping people, to help them navigate these complexities.
We are. Our passion is giving our clients the knowledge and support they need to make good financial decisions. We want to take the mystery and fear out of taxes and help people feel confident about their money.
That's fantastic. Knowing you have professionals on your side can make all the difference. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate this crazy tax landscape?
I think the key is to be proactive. Don't wait till the last minute. Start early, gather your information, and if you need help, reach out. The more prepared you are, the easier tax filing will be and the less stress you'll feel.
Excellent advice. Being proactive is definitely key when it comes to taxes. Well, we're coming up on the end of this part of our deep dive. This has been a really helpful conversation. You've given us such valuable insights and advice.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy opportunities to talk about important financial topics and to help people feel in control of their money.
And speaking of control, we're about to take things to a whole new level in the final part of our deep dive. It's amazing, as we've been talking about these rules and the changing threshold, it really shows how much more complicated our finances are getting.
Oh, absolutely. We live in a world with technology constantly changing how we handle money. These platforms are convenient, but they come with so many new rules.
Yeah, it can be tough to keep up. And it's not just the tech, it's also the politics. We see different bills proposing different things. It really shows how much debate there is around all this.
Exactly. All that uncertainty makes it hard to plan ahead. It's like trying to hit a moving target.
Exactly. That's why I think getting help from a tax professional is so important these days. Having someone who really understands these laws and can keep you updated on changes, that can really give you peace of mind.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's like having a guide in this confusing world, someone to help you make smart choices about your money.
This deep dive has been so helpful. We've covered all the important parts of this new rule, the history, the impact, and how listeners can stay informed.
We really got into the details, the challenges, and the opportunities. I hope everyone listening feels more ready to tackle their taxes.
And speaking of being prepared, I want to remind everyone that the Tax Service LLC is a great resource for anyone who needs personalized guidance and help with these tax changes.
Yeah, we're here to help. We want to make tax season as easy as possible.
So as we finish up our deep dive today, what's one thing you want our listeners to take away from all this?
I think the main thing is don't let all this scare you. Knowledge is power, so take the time to learn the rules. Stay up to date, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You can handle these changes with the right tools and support.
That's great advice. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. I'm always happy to talk about these things and help people feel in control.
And to our listeners, for expert help, be sure to visit demoretaxservice.com. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Taxes. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a new financial topic. Until then, stay informed, stay in control, and happy filing.